Amara had just finished teaching Primary 5 at the small village school. Her white NYSC shirt clung to her skin, drenched in sweat, as she walked along the narrow red road with her books pressed tightly to her chest. She was humming softly to distract herself from the heat when her steps suddenly froze. Just a few meters ahead, stretched across the dusty path, was a large python. Amara's heart jumped to her throat. Her books slipped from her arms and fell into the dust. "Oh my God!" she gasped, trembling. Without thinking, she spun around and ran as fast as her legs could carry her. Her slippers flew off her feet as though they, too, wanted to escape. She darted straight into the house of her fellow corps members, panting heavily, her face pale with terror. In Umuaka village, the python was not just an ordinary reptile. It was seen as a sacred messenger of the river goddess, a spirit that brought fertility, blessings, and protection to the land. The elders always said, to harm the python is to harm the entire village. If ever a python was found dead, the villagers treated it like the passing of a great chief. They would beat drums, sing mourning songs, dance, and perform burial rites with deep reverence. That was the way of Umuaka. The python was not feared, it was honored. When women gave birth, the villagers expected a special visitor at night, the sacred python. It would slither gently into the hut, coil itself beside the newborn's crib, and then depart silently. Far from fear, the mothers welcomed it. They believed the python whispered blessings over the child, protecting it for life. One hot afternoon, a new set of NYSC Corps members arrived in the village. There were 5 of them: Obiora, Kemi, Chidima, Emeka, and Halima. Their khaki trousers were still stiff, and their white sneakers too clean for the dusty village roads. As they stepped down from the rickety bus, curious villagers gathered. Some clapped in welcome, others offered them cola nuts and water. Children tugged at their shirts with excitement. The Corps members bowed politely and followed the village head, who led them to a small mud house roofed with rusting zinc sheets. Inside, goats bleated from the compound, and bats hung lazily from the rafters. It was not what they were used to, but it would be their new home for a year. Later that week, Nina, the respected village priestess, invited the Corps members to the riverbank at dusk. She told them stories of the sacred python, how it watched over newborn babies and kept the balance between the people and the river goddess. The Corps members sat quietly, some fascinated, others doubtful. Obiora nodded, listening with respect, but Kemi scoffed under her breath. "These are just folk tales," she muttered. "How can a snake protect a baby? That's ridiculous." Chidima nudged her gently. "Kemi, don't say that. Let's just respect their culture." But Kemi folded her arms stubbornly, staring away into the darkening horizon. That night, over dinner, the discussion continued. Emeka, slurping his Gary, teased Kemi. "You look like someone who would run if a small lizard crossed your path." Kemi rolled her eyes and replied sharply, "I've seen snakes in the city before, and I know they're dangerous. You can call it sacred all you want, but a snake is still a snake." Halima shook her head slowly. "Kemi, not everything is about what we think. Sometimes we just have to accept what people believe." But Kemi wasn't convinced. She leaned back, frowning. "Well, if I ever see that python, it had better stay away from me. I won't tolerate a snake crawling near me, sacred or not." Outside the window, the evening wind whispered softly through the trees as though it had overheard her words. That same night, Nina the priestess knelt before her small shrine. The flickering oil lamp cast shadows on the mud walls. She closed her eyes and prayed softly to Ide, the river goddess. "Protect these strangers," she whispered. "Guide them before fear blinds their hearts." Outside, the crickets sang and the distant sound of drums echoed from the village square. In her sleep later that night, Nina had a dream. She saw the sacred python, its golden eyes filled with tears, blood dripping from its mouth onto dry earth. The riverbed cracked open, the sun burned hot, and a deep voice warned, "Someone with a hardened heart will spill my blood. Warn them before it is too late." Nina woke with a gasp, her heart racing. Early the next morning, she rushed to the palace of the Igui. Kneeling before him, She spoke urgently. "Your Highness, the sacred python has spoken in my dream. Danger is near. One of the strangers may harm our spirit python." The Agui's expression darkened. He summoned the village elders immediately. Together, they agreed the visitors must be warned again. Messengers were sent to the Corps members' compound. When the young men and women gathered, the Agui spoke with authority, his voice deep and commanding. "Our python is not like other snakes. It is not to be feared. It is to be respected. We ask only one thing. If you see it, do not harm it." Obiora bowed quickly. "Yes, sir. We understand." Chidimma's eyes were wide with fear as she nodded. Halima clasped her hands together, whispering, "We will be careful." But Kemi folded her arms tightly, her jaw clenched. "All this for a snake?" she muttered under her breath. The Agui's eyes flickered toward her, but he said nothing. That night, as they ate okra soup with Gary, a small girl ran past their compound shouting, "Mama said the python came near the mango tree today." The Corps members exchanged uneasy glances. Kemi snorted, "Let that snake come near me. I swear I will kill it." The room went silent. Even the sound of chewing stopped. Obiora looked at her with worry. Something dangerous had begun, and no one knew how it would end. The next day, the sun was scorching hot, pressing down on the village like a heavy blanket. Amara had just finished another long day at the school. She walked alone on the narrow path, her books balanced carefully in her arms. She tried to distract herself by whistling, but then she stopped dead in her tracks. There, in front of her, stretched across the red earth, was the sacred python. Its body was long, shiny, and brown, glistening under the sunlight. It was as thick as her thigh, its tongue flicking in and out. Amara screamed, dropped her books, and bolted like lightning. "Snake! Big snake! It's coming for me!" she shouted. Her slippers flew off as she burst into the Corps members' compound, trembling and gasping for breath. The others rushed to her side. "Amara, what happened?" Chidimma asked anxiously. Amara's voice cracked. "That stupid python. It was lying there like a monster." Emeka burst out laughing. "Ah, so you finally met Aua, the sacred one." He joked, his shoulders shaking with amusement. Amara snapped at him angrily. "It's not funny. That thing could have bitten me." Obiora placed a calming hand on her shoulder. "Amara, it's not an ordinary snake. You know that already. Nobody touches it. It won't harm you." Halima nodded in agreement. "Please, let's be careful." But Kemi stood up, her eyes blazing. "I don't care what anyone says. A snake is a snake. The next time I see it, I will kill it." The room fell silent again. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the dry leaves. Nina the priestess, passing by, stopped in her tracks. She looked toward the compound, her eyes narrowing. Shaking her head, she whispered, "The heart that refuses to listen may one day break the Inside the compound, Kemi sat on her bed, still breathing heavily from her earlier outburst. She did not notice the small boy peeking through the half-open door. He had seen the look in her eyes when she spoke of killing the python. Later, the boy told his mother that the snake had not seemed angry when it appeared on the path. Instead, he said softly, "Mama, the python looked sad." His mother only hushed him, but his words spread quietly among the villagers. That night, as the crickets sang and the moon rose, the python moved silently through the bushes. It slithered past the mango tree near the Corps members' compound, paused for a moment, then disappeared into the forest. It harmed no one, but its presence left the air heavy with tension. Far away, in her hut, Nina tossed and turned. Sleep would not come. When she finally drifted into a dream, she saw the sacred python again. Its eyes were wide and sorrowful. Blood streamed from its mouth, staining the cracked earth. The river was dry, children cried from thirst, and the plants withered under a cruel sun. The python spoke, its voice like the rushing wind. "If my blood is spilled, the land will suffer. Warn them before it is too late." Nina woke abruptly, sweat running down her face. Her chest rose and fell as she whispered, "It must not happen. We must protect it." At dawn, Nina went once again to the palace. The Agui listened gravely, his brow furrowed. You say the python warns of blood and sorrow? He asked. Nena nodded. Yes, my king. Its blood must not be spilled. Without delay, the Agui called the council of elders. Together, they resolved to send messengers again to the young strangers. By mid-morning, 2 elderly men arrived at the core members' compound. They sat on wooden stools, cleared their throats, and spoke with voices heavy with warning. The Agui says you must never harm the python. It is the guardian of this land. If harm comes to it, great trouble will follow. Obiora bowed his head respectfully. We understand. We will obey. Chidima nodded with frightened eyes. Halima whispered softly, we must be careful. This is not ordinary. But Kemi muttered under her breath, I don't believe in all this spirit talk. A snake is a snake. Later, while washing plates outside, she told Amara quietly, all this is superstition. I've seen snakes in a market in Lagos. People kill them without drama. Why should this one be different? Amara shook her head nervously. Kemi, please. Don't say such things. What if it's true? But Kemi only smirked, her mind set like stone. In the village square, women were already whispering. The priestess has dreamed again, they told one another. The python is crying. We must pray. We must protect the spirit. Some nodded solemnly, others looked worried. But Kemi, as she strolled through the market, scoffed openly. This is foolishness, she muttered as she bought vegetables. They want us to bow to a snake? Not me. The wind stirred, rustling her clothes, as if nature itself had heard her words. That night, while others lay asleep, the python moved again near their compound. Its shadow slid by the mango tree, watching silently, then disappearing into the dark forest. Kemi turned in her bed, restless, unaware of the quiet eyes upon her. The next morning, Kemi woke up tired and angry. As she laced her shoes, she muttered loudly, this place is backward. No electricity, no network, and now they expect us to worship a snake. I can't wait for this service year to end. Obiora sighed, shaking his head. Kemi, must you always talk this way? The python means a lot to these people. We can't change their culture. We can only respect it. But Kemi only laughed, brushing his word aside. Respect what? Fear and ignorance? I'm not like you. I refuse to live by their foolishness. One evening, Kemi went to fetch water at the village borehole. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Women laughed as they balanced buckets on their heads. Children played with sticks in the dust, and birds chirped noisily. Suddenly, everything grew silent. By the mango tree, the sacred python appeared, its glistening body moving slowly, its tongue flicking in and out. Children ran to their mothers. Elders dropped to their knees in prayer. But Kemi's eyes narrowed with fury. She remembered her fear, and her pride boiled over. This nonsense must end today, she hissed. Without hesitation, she grabbed a heavy stick lying by the path. Obiora, who had followed her, cried out, Kemi, no, don't do it. But she ignored him. Raising the stick high, she struck the python hard. Twack! The snake hissed, coiling in pain. She struck again and again. Twack! Twack! The villagers screamed, some covering their faces, others pleading. Obiora rushed forward, but was too late. Blood splattered onto the dry earth. The python writhed once more, then lay still. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a little boy ran, screaming through the streets. Ayue! Ayue! They have killed the sacred python. Within minutes, drums thundered across the village. Women wailed. Men hurried to the scene, lifting the python's bleeding body with trembling hands. The Agui arrived in full regalia, his red cap shining, his staff raised high. His eyes burned with sorrow as he turned to Kemi. Why? He asked in a broken voice. Kemi swallowed hard, her stick still in her hand. It was dangerous. I had to kill it. Nina the priestess fell to the ground, wailing. You have killed our peace. You have spilled the blood not meant to be spilled. Her voice pierced the air, rising above the drums and the cries. The villagers gathered in stunned silence, their eyes filled with anger and grief. That night, the elders met in council. The Agui's voice was heavy as he declared, in our father's time, Such a crime meant death or exile. But we will show mercy. Yet justice must be done. His gaze fell on Kemi. You will perform the burial rites. You will marry the python in spirit. Only then will the goddess forgive us. Kemi's eyes widened in disbelief. Marry a snake? Are you mad? She shouted, her voice trembling with rage. She tried to push past the elders, but Amara and Halima held her back. Kemi, please, Halima whispered urgently. Don't insult them further. This is serious. Kemi kicked at the ground, her chest heaving. I will not marry a snake. I'd rather die. The villagers gasped at her defiance. Bigui raised his staff. Silence, he thundered. This is not a joke. You have broken our covenant. Only through these rites can the land be healed. From that night, Kemi was taken into the priestess's compound. She was dressed in white wrappers and given only plain food, yam without oil, water without salt. For 7 days, she lived apart from the others, guarded closely by women of the shrine. Every evening, villagers passed by the compound, peeking through the bamboo fence to see the woman who had struck down the sacred python. Some shook their heads in pity, others spat on the ground in anger. Inside, Kemi cried every night, her pride now battling with her fear. Why me? Why should I suffer for killing a snake? She muttered to herself. But deep down she knew this was no ordinary matter. Meanwhile, preparations for the burial began. Women wove a coffin from palm fronds, strong and decorated with cowries. Hunters beat slow, mournful rhythms on their drums, while children sang sorrowful songs in the village square. Old men sat beneath the Irako tree, carving wooden masks for the ceremony. The air in Umuaka was heavy with grief, as if the land itself mourned. Obiora visited Kemi at the shrine. Kemi, he said softly, I warned you. I told you to respect their ways. Now see what has happened. She turned away, tears running down her cheeks. I didn't believe. I didn't know, she whispered. On the 7th day, the entire village gathered at the sacred river. The drums beat slowly, their deep sound echoing across the water. Women ululated in sorrow, their voices rising to the sky. Children scattered flowers along the riverbank. At the center of the gathering lay the python's body, resting in the coffin of palm fronds, its scales decorated with beads and feathers. The Igui stood tall, his staff in hand. This is not an animal, he declared. This is our brother, our sister, our child. May the river goddess accept it. The priestess Nina turned to Kemi. Now you will speak. Kemi's eyes were swollen from days of weeping. Her legs shook as she stepped forward. The crowd fell silent, waiting. Her voice cracked. I am sorry. I didn't know. I mocked your ways. I killed what I should have respected. Please forgive me. She placed cola nuts on the coffin, poured palm wine as libation, and touched the python's head gently. I will be your wife in spirit. I will honor you forever, sacred one. Forgive me. The villagers listened, their faces solemn. At last, the coffin was lifted. Strong men carried it slowly toward the river as the drums quickened. Children ran ahead, scattering petals into the flowing water. The women's ululations pierced the air, sorrowful and strong. As the coffin was lowered into the river, something strange happened. A soft rain began to fall, though the sun still shone brightly. Look, someone shouted, pointing to the sky. A rainbow stretched across the river, glowing against the clouds. Gasps rose from the villagers. The goddess has forgiven us, whispered Nena with relief. The drums changed their rhythm, rising now in joy. The women danced, the men sang, and children clapped their hands. Though grief remained in their hearts, hope returned to the people of Umuaka. The land seemed to breathe again. That evening, after the rites were completed, the villagers gathered in the square. The Igui raised his staff once more. The covenant is restored, he announced. But let this be a lesson. Respect is the root of peace. Pride destroys, but humility heals. His words sank deep into the hearts of all who listened. In the days that followed, the villagers began to accept Kemi back slowly. She was no longer treated as an outcast. Instead, she was seen as someone who had learned a hard lesson. Though shame weighed heavily on her, she tried to make amends. She joined Amara and Obiora in repairing the broken benches at the school. She fetched water with Halima. She even sat with the priestess Nina, listening quietly to the old stories of the land. "I was foolish," she admitted once, "but I want to learn now." By the end of their service year, the core members had grown closer to the villagers. They laughed with the children, helped paint the school walls, and shared stories with the elders. The pain of the python's death lingered, but the burial rites had restored peace. On their final day in the village, the people gathered to bid them farewell. Women tied wrappers around their waists and danced. Drummers played loud, cheerful beats. Children clung to their legs, begging them not to go. Tears filled many eyes. As the rickety bus arrived, the core members hugged the villagers one by one. Obiora shook hands with the Igui. "Thank you for teaching us," he said respectfully. Chidima wiped tears from her eyes. Halima held the priestess's hands tightly, whispering, "I will never forget your wisdom." Finally, Kemi stepped forward, her voice low but steady. "I came here proud and blind. I leave humbled. I will carry this lesson with me forever." The priestess nodded. "Remember, child, every culture carries a spirit that keeps its people alive. When you respect it, you respect life itself." Back in the city, life moved at a different pace for the core members. The traffic, the noise, the flashing lights of shops and cars. Everything felt overwhelming compared to the quiet of Umuaka. Yet for Kemi, the memories of the village lingered like shadows in her heart. She often woke at night, hearing the faint hiss of a python in her dreams, or seeing its sad golden eyes. She told herself it was only a snake, but deep down she knew it had been more than that. Amara, on the other hand, returned to her teaching with renewed energy. She often told her city colleagues about the lessons of Umuaka. "Respect," she would say, "is not weakness. It is wisdom." Some laughed at her stories of the sacred python, calling them superstitions. But she only smiled. "You don't have to believe it," she replied gently, "but you should learn from it. Pride can destroy what respect can heal." Her words stayed with many who listened, though they rarely admitted it. Obiora also carried the lessons deep within him. Whenever friends mocked traditions as backward, he would shake his head and tell them about Umuaka. "I saw with my own eyes what happens when people mock the sacred," he would say. "Some things cannot be explained by science alone. They belong to the soul of the people." His friend would argue, but his calm voice always made them pause. He had changed. He was no longer the carefree youth who had arrived in Umuaka a year before. Halima, too, felt transformed. She often remembered the night rain fell and the rainbow spread over the river after the python's burial. To her, it was a sign of forgiveness, a reminder that peace could return even after grave mistakes. In her quiet prayers, she asked God to give her the wisdom to respect others, no matter their culture or belief. "Respect brings peace," she often told her younger siblings at home. "And peace is more precious than gold." As for Kemi, shame still lingered. In her heart, she struggled with the weight of her actions. Sometimes, as she walked through the busy markets of the city, she saw snake skins hung for sale, and she shuddered. Her mind would return to Umuaka, to the faces of the villagers mourning, to the voice of Nina crying, "You have killed our peace." At such times, she whispered under her breath, "I'm sorry," though no one around her understood what she meant. One evening, months after leaving the village, Kemi visited Amara. The two women sat in a small sitting room, drinking tea. Amara looked at her friend and asked softly, "Do you still think it was only a snake?" Kemi shook her head slowly. "No, it wasn't just a snake. It was their life, their spirit, their belief. I was foolish to think my fear was greater than their tradition." Amara touched her hand gently. "At least you learned. Many people never do." Later, Kemi went alone to the city's riverbank. She stood quietly, staring at the flowing water as the sun dipped below the horizon. Closing her eyes, she whispered, "Sacred One, forgive me again. May your spirit rest in peace. May I never forget what you taught me." A light breeze brushed her face, and she felt strangely comforted, as if unseen hands had accepted her words. She turned away, her heart lighter than it had been in many months. In Umuaka, the villagers also moved forward. The memory of the python lived on, told in evening tales beneath the moonlight. The children listened with wide eyes as elders said, "Once a stranger spilled the blood of the sacred one, but she humbled herself, and the goddess forgave." The story became a lesson for generations, a warning against pride, a reminder of respect. To the villagers, the python was still alive in spirit, watching over the land and blessing its children. Years passed. The core members went their separate ways, yet the bond of their shared experience remained. Whenever they met, they always returned to the story of Umuaka. Emeka would laugh and say, "Remember when Amara ran screaming, thinking the python was chasing her?" The others would chuckle, and Amara would protest, "It wasn't funny that day." But then silence would fall, and their thoughts would turn to Kemi's mistake and the forgiveness that had followed. The moral of their story became clear to all of them. Respect others, even when their ways seem strange. Pride blinds, but humility opens the eyes. Amara often told her students, "What you think is foolish may be sacred to someone else. Listen, learn, and respect. That is how peace is kept." And whenever Kemi remembered the rainbow over the river, she nodded silently. For her, it was a scar and a blessing at once. A reminder that forgiveness is possible, but only after humility. Back in her own family home, Kemi faced a new challenge. Her parents, proud city people, often mocked rural traditions. One evening during dinner, her father laughed. "Imagine people still worshiping snakes in this modern age. Backward nonsense." Her mother nodded in agreement, but Kemi sat quietly, her spoon frozen above her plate. At last she said softly, "It's not nonsense. It's their way of life, their covenant with the land." Her father stared at her in disbelief. "You mean you agree with them?" Kemi sighed. "No, I mean I respect them. And that is what matters." Her parents exchanged puzzled glances. For the first time, they realized their daughter had changed. She was no longer the stubborn girl who dismissed everything she didn't understand. She had seen something deeper, something that humbled her. Later that night, her younger brother asked, "Sister, why do you sound different?" Kemi smiled faintly. "Because I've learned that the world is bigger than our own beliefs. Every culture has something that keeps it alive. If you mock it, you mock the people themselves." Meanwhile, in Umuaka, the priestess Nena grew old. Her hair turned white, her voice grew weaker, but her wisdom remained strong. When the children gathered around her, she told the story of the python again and again. "Once, a stranger killed our sacred one. The land cried, the river threatened to dry, but forgiveness came. From that day, we learned, never let pride blind you." The children listened with wide eyes, and some asked, "Mama, did the python really forgive?" Nena would smile gently and say, "The rainbow was the answer. Forgiveness is real." The story spread beyond Umuaka. Traders who visited carried it to other villages. Soon, people in nearby towns spoke of the corpor's folly, the tale of the young woman who struck down the sacred python and was forced to marry it in spirit. Some laughed at the story, others took it as a serious warning. Yet everywhere it was told, people agreed on one thing. Disrespecting tradition brings trouble. Respecting it brings peace. Back in the city, Kemi began volunteering at cultural centers, teaching children about the importance of respecting traditions. She did not tell her own story openly, but sometimes in quiet moments she would hint. "I once made a mistake that nearly broke a people's heart," she told class one afternoon. "But I was forgiven and I learned. Never laugh at what others hold sacred. If you don't understand, at least listen." The children nodded, sensing the weight of her words. Amara, too, became an advocate for cultural respect. At teacher training workshops, she shared her experiences of Umuaka. "We often call traditions backward," she told her colleagues, "but many of them carry wisdom that keeps communities together. We must teach our children respect, or they will grow with pride and destroy what they don't understand." Her words inspired other teachers, and soon, schools in her district began adding cultural respect lessons to their programs. Obiora chose a different path. He entered public service, working in rural development. Whenever he sat with elders in villages, he listened carefully to their stories before making plans. Development without respect is destruction, he often said. If you don't understand a people's belief, your work will fail. His colleagues teased him for being too cautious, but his project succeeded where others collapsed. Quietly, he carried Umuaka's lesson into every corner of his career. Halima, gentle and thoughtful, became a counselor. She often told her clients, "Peace begins with respect." She didn't speak of snakes or rainbows, but she shared the spirit of what she had seen. "When we refuse to understand others, we cause conflict," she said softly. "But when we respect them, healing begins." Many left her office comforted, carrying her words like medicine. And Kemi? Though the years passed, the memory of the python never left her. Sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she still saw its golden eyes filled with sorrow. But now, instead of fear, she felt humility. It was her scar, her reminder, her silent teacher. She had once been proud and blind, but the village of Umuaka had opened her eyes. "I will never forget," she whispered often. Thus, the tale of the sacred python lived on, not only in the village where it began, but also in the lives of the strangers who once doubted it. It became more than a story. It became a lesson shared across towns and cities, told to children and adults alike. The message was simple yet powerful. Respect other people's traditions. What you think is foolish may be sacred to them. Listen, learn, and do not let pride lead you to harm. For even a snake, when it is sacred, can be family. Years later, when the core members reunited at a friend's wedding, they found themselves sitting together in a quiet corner, reminiscing about Umuaka. Emeka grinned mischievously. "Remember the day Amara ran barefoot into the compound, screaming about the python?" Everyone burst out laughing, including Amara, who covered her face in embarrassment. "You people will not let me forget," she cried. The laughter eased into silence, and all eyes turned to Kemi. She lowered her gaze, her voice soft. "That snake, it changed me forever." Obiora leaned forward. "Kemi, you were brave enough to admit your mistake. Many people never do. That's why the village forgave you." Kemi shook her head. "It wasn't bravery. It was shame. But the forgiveness they gave me, that was the true lesson. I don't deserve it, yet they showed me mercy." Amara smiled gently. "That's what makes it powerful. Forgiveness is harder than punishment." Halima added softly, "And that rainbow, I will never forget it." It was as if the heavens themselves spoke. The group sat in thoughtful silence, each remembering the scene at the river. The drummers, the mourners, the coffin of palm fronds, the sudden rain, and the rainbow arching across the sky. It was not just a memory. It was a scar etched into their souls. They knew they would never see the world the same way again. Emeka finally broke the silence. "We should tell our children this story one day. Let them know what pride can cause and what respect can save." The others nodded in agreement. Back in Umuaka, the villagers never stopped retelling the tale. Around evening fires, elders would begin, "Once, strangers came to our land," and the children would lean closer, eager to hear again. They learned how the sacred python had been struck down, how the land wept, and how forgiveness restored peace. The story became part of the village's living memory, as strong as the river that flowed beside them. To the villagers, it was more than history. It was a covenant for the future. And whenever strangers entered the village, the elders would remind them, "Here lives the spirit of the python. Respect it, and you will find peace. Mock it, and you will know sorrow." No one laughed after hearing the tale. Instead, most bowed their heads, whispering, "We understand." For the villagers, it was a shield protecting their way of life. For the outsiders, it was a reminder that every people have their sacred things, which must never be trampled. Over time, the core members each carried the story into different corners of the country. In classrooms, meetings, churches, and family gatherings, they spoke of it in different ways. Sometimes as a warning, sometimes as a lesson, sometimes simply as a story. But the heart remained the same: respect, humility, and forgiveness. The sacred python of Umuaka had become more than a village spirit. It had become a symbol of wisdom that crossed boundaries. Kemi, especially, carried the story like a flame. She never forgot the shame of her mistake, nor the mercy she received. "I once killed what others loved," she confessed once during a lecture at a cultural seminar. "And they forgave me. That forgiveness changed my life." Her audience listened in awe, many wiping their eyes. In her honesty, they saw themselves. In her lesson, they found guidance. One evening, long after the core year, Kemi returned quietly to Umuaka. She walked the familiar red roads, past the mango tree, past the village square. The people recognized her at once. Some still frowned, but many smiled gently. Nina was gone by then, but her daughter, now priestess, welcomed Kemi warmly. Together, they walked to the riverbank. Kemi knelt, placed flowers on the water, and whispered, "I am still sorry. I still remember." The river flowed gently, as if carrying her words away. As she stood, the evening sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow across the river. Children laughed nearby, chasing each other with sticks. The new priestess touched Kemi's shoulder. "You are forgiven, not just by us, but by the Spirit itself. Go in peace." Tears filled Kemi's eyes. She nodded, her heart lighter than ever before. She knew she would never fully escape the memory, but she also knew she had been changed forever. And so the story of Umuaka's sacred python lived on, not only in the dusty roads of the village, but in the hearts of those who carried it away. It taught that respect is stronger than pride, that forgiveness is more powerful than anger, and that every culture holds treasures unseen. In the end, the moral was clear. What you call foolish may be sacred to another. Listen, learn, and respect. For in respecting others, we protect the very bonds that hold humanity together.